I'm just sharing a brief perspective on what we're doing in our education enterprise here. I drew up this little infographic talking about why English training is a useful springboard into other things, okay? Because first of all, in every nation, English training it's an important feature of education. English training is important also for all languages. English training is important at all ages. English is pretty important for most of the sciences. And because English is the lingua franca, I guess it's also important for all professions. For a lot of reasons, we call English a good wrapper. It's a good wrapper for other things. Now, from our perspective, when we talk about all ages, and from an educative standpoint, English is applicable to primary students, secondary students, higher education students, and also into the career. So from a standardized human life journey perspective, this is a useful standardization that pretty much all of us humans have experienced, right, in the modern world. And when we're dealing with education generally, or career dynamics, motivation is really important. Presentation is also really important. Now, when I'm younger, I'm going to say that we're more interested in motivating students because they're not really self-regulatory. But when we get older, we're more interested in presentation than we are in motivation because we are self-motivated when we're older and we're actually trying to advance our career. But for both motivation and for presentation, personal profiles are a key factor. The interesting thing when you're younger, if you're not really into your own personal profile, that's something that you do learn as you get older. However, because the modern era is so infected by the social media phenomena, then presentation is becoming more and more of a feature at a younger and younger age. Now, my question is to take this presentational aspect of the human condition and make it motivational at an earlier age. So I want younger students to actually be motivated by their education profile. So that's a good overview for talking about the science of learning, which as a company I think is becoming more and more important. I mean, there was a time when you could simply throw an education product out there and it didn't have to solve big problems. It didn't have to have any theoretical or scientific confirmations, and those times I think are changing. Let me move over to this other space over here. I've got this scientific approach to education that we're taking. So right here we're talking about micro-level data, which is real-time clickstream data. So it helps to drive control in the moment. Meso-level big data, this is sort of mid-spectrum data, like over the week or over the month. Like here we're dealing with affective states, for example. Here we're examining affective constraints. So this is sort of mid-spectrum stuff. Now over here when we're dealing with big data, this is multi-year long-spectrum stuff where early warning systems, course guidance and information systems, these are driving some of the more fundamental and universal design components in our enterprise. I have these three categories of data represented here in the middle of this graphic. And you can think of this like an onion where you have an inner layer, a second layer, and the outside layer. And the inner layer feeds this second layer, which is the theoretical layer, where we're talking about the science of learning, student performance, course design, instructor and mentor activities. So there's a theoretical assumptions that we're making, testable hypotheses that are driving this outer layer. So the data informs our theory and our hypothesis, and based on our theory and our hypothesis, that's where our teams put together our systems and our services. Okay, so you think about it that way. When it comes to learning science, I have a couple of representations down here, just cognitive science, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Pasteur quadrant and the assumptions going on here, but I just put that here to emphasize that we're basing our system on scientific assumptions. And so that's up here where you have your theory-driven dynamics, and down here you have your data-driven dynamics, and in the middle these two collide. And this is going to inform or confirm or disconfirm this. What we're trying to do is establish this cycle of improvement where we're basically designing the learning experience over here, and then we're collecting data in our SIS LMS. We're collecting the data, then we're analyzing the data over here like this, and then we're refining our theories and our models up here like this. And so that's the way that we're approaching our enterprise from a science of learning perspective. And the last thing I'll say here, if I just zoom out down here, from a science of learning perspective, what are the dynamics that we're trying to comprehend? Well, here we're tracking different skill types. We're tracking language skills, academic skills, study skills, and social skills. Let me zoom in here and just look at this for a minute. And these are the first dimension skills, like language, academic, study, and social skills. Second dimension are internal to language skills. The internal second dimension skills are reading, listening, speaking, writing, vocabulary, and grammar. Interskills for academics are math, science, social studies, right? You're getting the picture. You've got multidimensional skills going on. Arising out from that is a very, very complex field of influence. Like my listening skills are going to definitely affect my social skills in some way. They're going to affect my peer interaction definitely, and my response to authority. What about my math skills? How are my math skills going? Do they have more influence on my science skills, or do my science skills have more influence on my math skills? And does that dynamic change over time? Do those vectors change? This is a highly dynamical problem. What we're describing here is a system with a controller. So some systems are easy to understand because they have low dimensional dynamics, and some systems have high dimensionality. They have unknown dynamics. They're nonlinear. They change over time, and they are very difficult to measure. So we need to create these mathematical approximations or proxy systems. And there's mathematical tools for that due to fast computation we can deploy now. But without getting into the science of it, basically what we're trying to do, if I zoom in down here, is understand the vector fields of influence between these different tier 1 skills and their inner second dimensional tier 2 skills. And so this is a highly complex system that we collapse down into a proxy system so that we can run control law, and so that we think of a system being stable, but there are dynamics that are trying to destabilize it. And so we need a feedback loop which takes the complex dynamics, collapses it down into a proxy representation, and then use that proxy representation to discover your optimal sensors and actuator placement, and then the laws that contribute back into the system to keep it stable. So if your individual student is not performing at the optimal state, then we want to understand what the dynamics are and the important components of learning that are off kilter, and then be able to come back and provide some control to restabilize the performance of the individual student.